It's an honor to receive this, and our former board chair is here, MP Collins, and our new CEO and former CEO not here, but we really had an amazing team on this, and I'm excited to share it with you today. So when I say Hamilton, you may not have this picture in mind, but we've really transitioned from a post-industrial city to something entirely different. What's interesting is we're now the most diversified economy in Canada. And then if you think about investments into the city, $4 billion in the last 2 years have gone in during the pandemic. And if you look at the greater Hamilton area, there's over 800,000 folks. At the same time, paradoxically, that our city has begun to thrive again, we have this homeless issue, and it is deeply troubling. It is pervasive, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it in your own communities. Sometimes I've just wondered, how did we get here? And when you ask folks who are experiencing homelessness, the answer sometimes can just be as simple as, I don't have enough income for the type of housing that's available. And so if you distill that, there's a couple of factors I want to highlight here. So one is, in the last 40 years, 4 decades, there has been almost no purpose-built rental. There's some, but essentially none, you can see here, right? And then at the same time, Canada has been ranked the worst in the world for affordability. So that's income ratio to housing cost. So what do you do? Where do folks on the margins go? So somewhat granular picture here, but is an amazing community. We're building out 500 folks, mixed income, pedestrian focused, all these best practices from around the world. And folks, across the country are doing these fabulous new developments, and it's part of the answer. The other piece is, it's sort of a dual challenge. We actually have to maintain our current units, and that's quite a feat. To give you a sense of the scale of the task of maintaining existing buildings, this shows all towers in Canada. So new condos, they're in here. Something like post-war, it's in here. And what this is showing is over half of all the towers in the country are greater than 50 years old. So 50, 60 years old, right? So that means there's a glut of building repairs coming due at end of life. And this was the case for our tower. The Ken Soble Tower at 500 MacNab is the oldest in our oldest high-rise in our portfolio. It was built as a centennial project, meant to kick off a number of other projects in the city, and as there were across the country. And these are not AI, generated images. When you put in worst building you can imagine, this was preconditions, and this is not due to a lack of effort or administration or anything. This is due to underfunding. So just to be clear, this is what underfunding looks like of affordable housing. Contrast that with any hospital, any school you've been in. Those are nice and shiny, just saying. So our board was faced with a tremendous decision. It's like the canary in the coal mine for us and other housing providers too. It's do you demolish? This has happened all throughout Europe. Do you sell? And so, they become private market units and you have to rebuild somewhere else. And on our board, with their strategic sort of cap on and with foresight, they understood it was cheaper to just maintain these units and reinvest in them. So that's the choice that they made. And that's where I came in to lead this one. And we looked, right from the outset, we looked at best practices around the world. And there's so many tremendous projects, especially when you go into Europe. They're 20 years ahead in many things. Again, with building retrofits, they're there. And there was the quality of building, quality of life for tenants, the energy performance, all these things. So we love these exemplars. Boring slide, but really, really key here is we took those best practices and we tried to imagine what could we layer in to the capital repairs we had to do. We already had a tremendous amount of work. We were like, okay, let's give ourselves some more work. What more can we do, right? So we aim to achieve basically 100% GHG emission reduction. Is it possible? Let's try to do it. How do we prepare the building for the changing climate? So 30, 50 years out with projections for what the climate will look like. How is this still a comfortable building to be in and not a hot box? And then in terms of accessibility, no ability for folks to age in place. There's no accessibility in the building. So how do we increase that to 20%? So we packaged all this up brought it to funders like FCM, CMHC, and others. And we had an amazing response. Folks were in. They thought they were in. They wanted to be in. You know, it took a lot of time to work together, but they were in. And so the funding that was committed was enough to enable all the measures we needed to make this a transformational project. And I'll just say here, it took 3 years from those funding commitments to construction. So a lot of time designing, planning, all these things. And sort of, and the other point I want to make there is like sort of you think you're at the top of the hill, right? And then you look over and there's actually another peak. So that's kind of our 3-year journey. I'll just highlight a few of the construction pieces, just for those engineers in the room who might have been, you know, here for that earlier session. So this is a mass climber, custom built for this building, surrounds it, would go up, would strip the building of exterior elements, including balconies. Might be debatable, but they block views, they inhibit light, and they're like a nightmare for every 15 years, you know, renewing them in some element, the slab, all these things. Here you're seeing what we call a cementitious fluid applied air barrier. It's a fancy way of saying this thing made the building 20 times more airtight than a typical building. Here, this is the Big Witter Code. This is mineral wool being wrapped on. So just to keep everything cozy after you've got the airtightness. And here's the, you know, the final touches bringing the building back to life visually. So those are all some of the big visual cues of change, but there was all the behind the scenes work. So what's notable here is the building went from fully gas in terms of space heating to fully electric, and it's actually more cost effective. We also, by preserving the structure, we were able to maintain, you know, all that embodied energy that went into production of the building. So we have effectively saved 200 years of embodied carbon by retaining and retrofitting. Beautiful units. There's so much to be said here, but the main thing is, besides beautiful units, because they are beautiful, is 24/7 clean filtered air, better air quality than outside. That's not a joke about Hamilton. It could be anywhere. BC, you could be, you know, forest fire, like better air inside. Amazing community amenity spaces. And just to hone in on like final thoughts here, it's like we undertook an analysis to see what more could we do, and we weren't just trying to do a capital repair. And so these are some of the things, you know, it's, I'll look at the English side. So cost-effective preservation of affordable housing. So this is financial sustainability. And then resiliency to extreme events. This is, you know, climate, it's pandemic, all those things. And then mitigation of GHG emissions. So doing our part for the world. And remarkably, I don't think this one-off building is the big success story here. Really, it just points to a further direction. A success would be if we did many buildings, right? And it's shown a pathway, it's demonstrated a pathway in our context. And if we can nail this, if we can take public funds or incentives or other things and produce results that are energy efficient, better indoor air quality for residents, both in the public and the private sector, then we can really get on with the business of what we're supposed to be doing, which is housing people and quality living and working towards environmental sustainability, financial sustainability too. There we go. Thank you.